Welcome to the Innovation Conversation, a podcast about innovators, both in business and real life. Hosted by myself, Ricardo Pascual, and Harry McDonough. This podcast is also sponsored by ODEV Tech. ODEV Tech is your premier software development partner. Make sure you check them out at odev.tech. The podcast is also sponsored by Notion.so. Notion is offering 6 months for free for new users. Make sure you check out our website, thestartupevents.co.uk, to redeem this offer.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Conversation. Today we are joined by Azahara Vera Cobos. Azahara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Azahara, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yes, of course. So my actual name is Azahara, but everyone calls me Azzy. I am the head of scouting and programs at Startupwise Guys. Startupwise Guys is a global funds accelerator that invests in B2B startups all over the world. We have more than 440 startups invested in our portfolio. And we have very recently closed our exit number 20. And we work with startups all around the world. But we specifically have people mostly living in Europe. So we are basically scattered around the world, working mostly remotely. We have our home in Tallinn, and then other places where we feel like it's home as well, like here in Malaga, where I am myself.
Nice. I mean, so there is no connection with the mafia whatsoever, despite the name.
No, not indeed.
It's like, Ricardo, don't make that joke. No. But I absolutely love the name. You mentioned something quite fascinating, which is you've had a lot of successful exits, which is not, I think it's always a really good success, I guess, way of evaluating things, because 20 is a really high number. So it's an excellent number to have. Why do you think that is? What makes you so successful? Is there any type of philosophy your company follows to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes to a combination of several things. We've been in the market for 12 years now. We started in Estonia, so we obviously have we know that country is a small country, but with lots of very promising, amazing founders. So I think we started by connecting with really great founders in that country. And I strongly believe in great founders actually connecting to other great founders. So I think that we started building that network very well 12 years ago. And from there, we of course expanded to other countries. And I think we managed to keep doing that work that we started in Estonia with kind of an overlooked market. And then we've kept doing that in other markets as well. And I also think that not only we are good at making those connections and networks, we're also good at nurturing those startups. So we select great founders, but then we also like to work very closely with them so that we can help them grow and succeed in whatever they're doing. We work with them in the accelerator programs, but then we also keep very close to them after the program ends. So I think that's mainly part of the success.
Is there any vertical you focus on, or is it agnostic?
We have multiple verticals that we focus on. We have accelerator programs that are focused on SaaS, which is the most generic one. But we also have PropTech, Web3, cybersecurity, defense, sustainability. So we do have lots of verticals. But I would also say that we are mainly open to any really great B2B early stage startup, say.
Interesting. And when you're looking at all these founders, all these ideas for startups, I'm sure you've managed to identify trends in the sense that you kind of know who's going to make it or not. Tell me,
I could say yes. I wish I could say we have the secret sauce, but no, I think I would lie if I say that we know what makes a startup great. I don't think anyone has that really secret sauce. We think that basically, if you ask my personal point of view, I like very much founders that obsess over solving problems rather than obsessed with the products that they are building. And I think that's I basically see that very easily when we start talking to founders, and you see that very quickly when they are really good at explaining why they want to solve the problem that they want to solve and how big that market is and how ambitious they are, to make that a reality and to fix that challenge, that problem they have identified. Usually, I don't think that's a secret sauce, but that is one thing that we look at a lot when we select startups, basically.
And, how does the process look like for a startup that wants to join?
So the easiest way is to apply to one of the programs that we are running across the year. We have multiple programs running all year long, and that will be the easiest one. And then once they apply through the program, we basically screen them and we invite them into our scouting process. Another way, of course, is to connect directly with someone from Startupwise Guys. So, of course, because of that, we have that network of founders, but also mentors in our network, of course, the investors from our funds as well. Basically, almost anyone from the Startupwise Guys team, we are always open to meet great founders. So I would say, anywhere to connect with us directly. And that can be through LinkedIn. It can be if you see us in an event, or of course, if you apply directly through a program, which is obviously also an easy way.
Interesting. As a lot of these startups exit, and 20 is a really good number to have, as successful exits. Have you managed to identify how should I put this? Have you managed to identify what actually makes or break a startup? And it's always the same thing, or actually does it vary dramatically depending on the startup?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny because it's kind of linked to the first answer that I gave you. So I think most of the times what breaks a startup is the team. And then it's also very hard for some startups to raise funds. So they manage to raise sometimes they manage to raise that first round of investment, but then they struggle for the second round because they don't manage to get to that point where they can raise money again. So I'd say first is the team to, actually break through and resist through the highs and lows, especially the lows, the market constraints, and actually making the first sales. And not only those first sales, but being consistent in growing those sales. Usually that's also a thing that breaks startups, is when they don't manage to get that done well, which is also something that we help in our programs. We help them with their sales development and their sales marketing approach. So I think I would say basically those are the two key points. 3. So team, sales, and investment.
So let's focus on the investment for now, because I'm always curious. I'm sure you get a lot of very cold emails asking for money straight away, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think it's the best way for a startup? And I know I have a lot of startups listening to this, to actually go out and raise capital.
You mean when it's a cold outreach?
When it's a cold outreach, because what I find is it's easy for you to raise capital if you have already a gigantic network of people that have the availability to lend you the money or invest in your company.
Yep.
However, it doesn't always happen that way. And especially when you're creating a new product that might not be the right product for your specific market. It might be the right product. Let's say in Spain, you might be building something that works really well in the UK. But you won't find investors in Spain willing to take that leap. So how do you manage that? What was the best way?
That's a great question. I agree that, of course, it's easier to raise funds when you have that network or when you have someone connected to the person that you need to talk to. But when it's a cold outreach, for me, usually what helps is when that email that you send out or that message that you send out through LinkedIn actually has something that really makes me want to know more. So you can't usually, sometimes startups, what happen with them is they tend to send really long emails with everything they want to achieve and, and their dreams and everything. Most of the times we don't have time to read really long emails with all the startups that approach to us. So I would say usually what helps me is when you are very straight, you reached out to me very straightforward with what you offer. So usually you should know who you are talking to. So if you know that we are looking for B2B early stage startups that invest in these specific verticals, and if you know what we do, you should be able to tailor that message accordingly as well. So, hey, we are a B2B SaaS startups. We've started doing this. This is the kind of traction that we have achieved so far, which means you can either have revenues, or if you don't have revenues, what kind of metrics you have to demonstrate that you have something that is already kind of validated in the market. And then just leave me hanging there, leave me wanting to really know more about you. So if you manage to, if you are raising funds, but you've already started raising part of those funds and you have maybe 20% of the total investment closed or something that says to me that, that there might be something appealing there. Sometimes some people also attach like a short video with their product demo. That's fine. But what I would say is just make sure that in a few bullet points, you tell the key things that are going to leave me wanting to meet you and wanting to know more.
Interesting. So it's all about delivering a message that, it's captivating, isn't it?
Yeah. And making sure that if you have, this is funny because sometimes startups have metrics that they've started collecting, but sometimes they don't share them straight away. And for me, sometimes it's funny because I always tell them, just tell me, everything that you've achieved so far, because that's how I know if you have something that is appealing in the market, because we don't invest in at the idea stage. We invest when they already have an MVP or an idea that it's already started to be validated in the market. So if you are at the point, you should have something to show me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it's really hard to invest in just an idea, isn't it? I mean, you must really believe strongly in that founder or that team to just say, hey, here's my money, go and create something, build an MVP with just an idea. It's like, well, hold on.
I've seen it. Sometimes it's because that founder is a second-time founder.
Okay.
And then you already know that he's already done it one time, and either he did a successful exit, or he just was very good building product, but that first product didn't make through because it wasn't the right time, it wasn't the right market, whatever that is. So I've seen it. I think right now it's way more rare than a few years ago when it was much easier to raise money that way. Right now, I think you need to show that you have really an amazing idea, or you're really great building products, and you have that track record, and you can tell others, hey, I'm building this, I'm about to build this. If you jump in now, it's perfect timing. But I would say that is a very rare.
Very rare.
At least in our case, it's definitely very rare. But in general, in the industry, I've seen that is less and less common than it used to be 5 or years ago.
Interesting. What do you think? We mentioned team and sales, two things that I'm quite passionate about. When it comes to team, is there any tips or tricks you have that, make it work better? Because ultimately, at least when you have two founding members, it comes down to it actually being a relationship. And you end up spending more time with that person than you spend with your loved ones, especially when you're building stuff. So how do you manage that? Have you found the magical formula that kind of works, or it's always, it's like any relationship?
Yeah, I don't think there's a magic formula. What I usually see working very well is when those two people, assuming there are two, they know each other for a very long time, either from, they've studied together, they've worked together, they've done other projects, not even related to startup, well, together. They've gone through. The important thing is that they have had arguments before, so they know how to get through that. And also they've gone through tough times together. That ideally, that's usually something that helps, because it's going to happen eventually in a startup as well. And also having complementary skills really help. I've seen many times, and it doesn't mean that it can't work, because of course you can have a team of two engineers that, make it through amazingly. But usually the great combination is when you have one very good tech one, and then when you have someone really good in sales and business. Usually that combination is the best. Of course, it's a very difficult combination. Sometimes it doesn't happen both at the same time. But ideally, you should have someone very good building the product and someone very good at selling the product.
Which brings me to my next topic, which is actually sales. So I actually have a sales background. And I think what always impresses me is how some founders are unable to sell their idea themselves, and they go on to hire other people to sell their idea. And for me, it's always been a pet peeve. And like I always know if there's a sales position open and the founder is asking, can you come and sell my idea? It's not going to work because the founder needs to sell. But what's your take on this? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because that's also something that I've seen happening a lot. Startups struggling to explain what they do. It doesn't mean that that they're not a good startup, but it's usually not a good sign, because if they're unable to explain to an investor what they are doing, I think, sorry.
That's completely fine. It's actually, I think it adds a very nice element to the podcast. So for our listeners, Azzy's son is actually on the background singing, which is great.
I think he's calling me, but if we can hold.
Okay, so for our listeners, we just had a little break. So as you can check out our son, we're back on. So we're talking about sales team and also actually reaching out to investors.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious about what you think about what's actually happening right now. Interest rates are going down as we speak. There's always a lot of conversations about how hard it's actually to raise funds.
Yeah.
From your side, from your perspective, what do you think? Is this a good moment or a bad moment?
It's a difficult moment. I wouldn't say it's bad, because I think it was worse before. I think it's getting better, but it's still very hard. We see in the market overall that kind of a lot of people are really, struggling to raise these funds. But I think it's gonna eventually get better. It was way worse 1 year ago. So I think it's gonna get better eventually.
I'm curious on something else, which is, you mentioned that you're founded in Estonia. Now you also have offices in Spain. I mean, you have a pretty big European network of startups coming your way. How relevant is it for a startup to actually think outside of the box or outside of their specific country and go elsewhere? Also, do you think that's easy to do or not so much?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny. I've seen trends. So for some countries, they always start with their own country. And then eventually when they've managed to break through in their country, then they think, to go outside of the country. For other countries, it's the opposite. They always think outside of their country first. So, for example, for really small countries like, say, Lithuania, Estonia, they usually think outside of their country first. And they're they usually have a more global mindset first. And I think it's because of the size of the country. Whereas, for example, countries like Spain or France or Turkey, they usually always think of local first. And then, if they break through, then they think about going outside other countries.
But, as an investor, when you look at Spanish startups, would that be a criteria, for example? Because I end up talking with a lot of startups because obviously we run a lot of events in Spain. And they always, I think they're kind of struggling to break away from the Spanish market. What do you think?
Well, for us, we are global. We look for scalability. So if you don't have a global mindset to go outside of your country, then we are not going to invest, essentially.
Okay.
But I would say it's not just us. Overall, I see that they usually struggle to find investment if they don't have a global mindset.
Interesting. So it's all about think globally, act locally type of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to start in your own country. I think it makes sense. But you should have if you are a startup with ambition to grow, you should have a plan to go beyond your country as
well. When you see all these founders and they're kind of struggling, what do you tell them? Because I'm always curious, because, startup life is crazy. You have really good moments and everything is amazing. And then you have a horrible week. The world's going to fall apart. Oh my God, I don't know if I can live another day. So what do you tell people when that happens?
Yes, the founders, I feel their pain because I understand how hard it must be, to go through those highs and lows. I feel proud of our team because we are very well connected to our startups. I'd say our CEO, Cristobal, talks on WhatsApp with so many of them, startups from our portfolio that have been invested with us since the first year. So, and they still, if they are feeling like they need help or they need someone to help them with a specific challenge with whatever that might be for an investment round, but it can also be for, I need I need an intro with a client, and I feel specifically proud that our founders feel that we are very close to them. So if they need our help, we are there to help them, basically.
Interesting, which brings me to my next question. As a founder, and this is a bit of a tricky question for you to answer, but as a founder, let's say you have a lot of opportunities on the table in terms of VCs would pick. So what do you think should be the criteria for a founder and the questions they should ask from a VC fund to understand, actually, is this a good partner to work with or not?
Yeah. Yes. I personally think that a relationship with an investor is going to be for potentially longer than any other personal relationship, longer or stronger, should I say. So you probably are going to have really tough conversations with that person. You're going to have to report to that person like on a monthly basis. So I think in some occasions, it can be tougher than your own personal relationship with, your partner. So I think it's important that you choose, if it's important for your personal life, to, who you want to partner with in your personal life. In this case, I think it's the same. It's as important as that, because for most founders, their startups is their own dream. So I think for me, and everyone talks about this, but I think it's the way it should be, is you look out there for smart money. And smart money is not just money, it's how can these people help me? In which way? And it can be in many ways. It can be because they have, a strong network in a specific industry that I need, or it can be because they're going to help me with the next round of investment as well, and they're going to they're going to be available for me when I need help and I need support. It needs to be something beyond the money itself, because the money fades once you've already requested it. Then that's it. That's all you get. I think founders should basically think a lot about who they put in their cap table, and they should ask many questions before accepting who they add in their cap table. They should also ask other founders from that network. How is your relationship with these people? How was, the whole investment deal? How did they treat you in the process? How are they treating you now? So we, for example, when we get startups to join us in our programs, we always ask them to talk to other founders that are in our portfolio network, so they can firsthand hear from those people, how they went through the program, but also how they are right now after the program. And I think that's important. I would do it as a founder.
Interesting.
I would talk to people around the investors.
Because it's always matchmaking, isn't it? It goes both ways.
Yes.
Because the criteria,
how it should be. Yes.
Because the criteria cannot be just give me money and then magic happens. It needs to be the way. Like, are you the right type of money for my company?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know a couple of people that what they do is they take 50% of the company and then say, here you go, here's the money. And I'm just thinking that's crazy. They don't want to do that, especially at seed stage, because you're gonna.
It's terrible. Yeah.
There's nothing you can do afterwards.
Something that I've seen a couple of times already is in Startupwise Guys, is startups that come to us and their cap table is absolutely broken, horrid, at a very early stage. And we know we can't invest with that kind of cap table, but because the cap table was so broken, we felt so bad for those founders. We actually had a few conversations with them to show them and to explain why their cap table was broken. We were not going to invest, but at least we felt like these guys deserve to know what's happening with their cap table. And even if we are not going to invest, so they know in which state they are, because they obviously haven't been very well, advised. So I think I place pride in that we always think founder first. Mm-hmm. And even if we are not going to invest, if we can help, and you are in the process with us, we're going to help you.
And what does a healthy cap table looks like?
It definitely doesn't look like 50% of the.
I imagine so.
Out of our control. I mean, obviously, the healthiest cap tables is when the founders have the equity is shared proportionally. If they have investors already in the cap table, that they haven't lost, of course, control of of their own company. So obviously, definitely owning way more than 50% of your company when you are at an early stage. So, and not having a ridiculous amount of investors in that cap table from the very beginning. I've seen cap tables with a very, very long list of investors, which in basically means when it comes to a point where you have to have board meetings or when you have to make decisions, I mean, those things obviously can be legally bound in contracts, in the agreements that you sign, but it usually makes it messy.
And what, in terms of the legal settings, do you think I know you have multiple operations in Europe, but is there a better geography to run the startup than the other one, or it's all pretty much the same?
I mean, there are countries where they have more help, from government side to build and to create startups. So I know Estonia is a great example of a country where you can very easily set up a startup and set up a business. Other countries are more difficult. I'm aware there. I don't want to get in trouble, but I know that other countries are not as easy. What I would always say to startup is, once you know you are building a startup and once you have your team that you want to do it with, just get a lawyer first. Go to a lawyer and make sure that you sign that agreement with your co-founders, and that you have a lawyer who is an expert that can help you assess once you have your first investors on board as well. Like, I think a lot of founders underestimate the importance of having legal help from the very beginning, because I think it can save you from a lot of issues in the future.
Yeah, I agree 100%, because that makes a huge difference, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, you're building your dream, but your dream needs to be legally protected, especially when different money comes in. So yeah, it's a big thing. As we're reaching the end of the podcast, if people want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
Please, you can find me on LinkedIn, and also you can find me on Twitter. I can send you the handle if you wish, Ricardo, so you can.
I can put it on the description of the podcast.
Great. So yeah, I think LinkedIn and Twitter will probably be the easiest way.
So it'll be Startupwise Guys, and then Azahara Vera Cobos, right?
Yes.
It sounds good. Azzy, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Ricardo.
Thank you.
The podcast is also sponsored by Notion.so. Notion is offering 6 months for free for new users. Make sure you check out our website, thestartupevents.co.uk, to redeem this offer. This podcast is also sponsored by startupnetworks.co.uk. Startup Networks, it's an online forum where you can find all the resources you need to run your startup, from grants to investors to tips and tricks on how to be successful in your startup. This podcast is also sponsored by ODEV Tech. ODEV Tech is your premier software development partner. Make sure you check them out at odev.tech.